Okay guys, Justin Brown from IdeaPod here. Today's video is on spiritual ego, spiritual narcissism. I'm going to go through the three types of spiritual ego that most people go through when they develop this unhealthy type of ego. I'm then going to share 15 key signs to look out for so you can identify if someone's going through spiritual ego around you or if you're going through spiritual ego. Finally, I'm going to share at the very end of this video exactly what to do if you've got someone in your life that has spiritual ego. Now, the answer is not to shut them out. It's not to draw your boundaries with them. It's going to be something very different, and it's worth sticking around to find out what it is. Before I get into the video, a very quick note. I'm sharing this because I'm currently on Koh Phangan, an island in Thailand, and there's a huge spiritual community of people. And then the other day I met a new friend, someone who's been living here for 3 years, and her first question to me was, "You're not a yoga person, are you?" And she was worried that I was one of those spiritual seekers on the island, part of the community. And my friend told me that when she meets yoga people on the island, she feels like in general, the yoga people are very selfish people that are very wrapped up in the story they tell about themselves. And that got me thinking about spiritual ego and the fact that I used to have a very unhealthy spiritual ego. So this video in part is kind of a confession of mine. I feel a little guilty being here in Koh Phangan and seeing spiritual ego everywhere. So I want to share this video to go a little deeper. So please know that this is a self-exploration as I go through all of these different signs of spiritual ego. Now, the other part of the video is that my friend Chira, the one who I had this great conversation with, she's on her way here now, and she's a local tour guide. She's going to take me to some really unusual parts of Koh Phangan. So I'm going to take you with me so you get to see the beautiful parts of Koh Phangan. And as I go through this journey, I'm going to share the key parts of this video as we explore spiritual ego together. So to get this video started, I first want to explain what it means to have a spiritual ego. So spirituality is really the pursuit of knowledge relating to something outside the material world or outside the five senses that we've got. So there's some sort of knowledge of something outside all of that. And I think when you're on a spiritual path, you're seeking to pursue a life where you're incorporating a set of practices as well as a set of concepts related to whatever you discover about this non-material world. And I think at some level, everyone's spiritual in that we're all aware of something infinite, something outside ourselves, that there's a whole lot more to life than what we can see, touch, feel, smell, and so on. So that's what spirituality is and pursuing a spiritual life. Now, when you've got spiritual ego, or you're becoming a spiritual narcissist, that's when you start to identify who you are in relationship with the spiritual path you're on. So usually someone has arrived at some sort of an aha moment. They've had some sort of transcendental experience. They may have met someone very profound and wise who shared something that's totally opened up their eyes to something new for the very first time. Or it could be one of those first experiences you can have doing something like ayahuasca or some sort of retreat or kundalini yoga or breath work. So you have this huge rush, this huge insight. Now, that's a pretty normal thing. That's a pretty wonderful thing for us all to chase, to experience. But the problem is when you build an identity around that experience that you've got, and when you start to see yourself as superior to others for having had that experience or having had that insight. So it's the superiority combined with building it around your identity that involves having a spiritual ego and becoming a spiritual narcissist. So that's what having a spiritual ego means. Now, I'm going to go a little bit deeper and explain the three types of spiritual ego that I see most people kind of transitioning through as they build this stock of spiritual insights. But first, Chira is going to take us a little deeper into Koh Phangan. Oh, where are you taking us? So in just a moment, I'm going to go through the 15 signs that someone's got a spiritual ego. First, I want to explain the 3 types of spiritual ego that people pass through. So the first type is when you're going through the novice stage of spiritual exploration. And this is where you have that first insight, and you may have learned something really profound from one of the spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle or Osho or something like that. And these spiritual gurus have this real knack for managing to universalize what they're teaching so that you feel like it's particularly relevant for you, and it really describes what you're going through. And that's because it does. There's something very genuine in these teachings. But when you first have that insight, then you think that what you're going through applies to everyone else around you, but you've arrived at this particular place because you've figured this out. So that's the novice stage when you first started. The next stage is the yogi stage. And these are the people who they've chosen a method or they've chosen a particular approach. And it could be yoga, it could be one of the types of yoga, it could be many different things. And then you realize there's a whole system of teaching behind this one insight. And as you go down the rabbit hole of these learnings, you realize that more and more of these insights apply to you and what you're going through. Therefore, it must apply to other people. So the yogi often goes around thinking that particular method or system is what needs to be shared with other people. So they start proselytizing, which means they want to spread the word and bring people into their movement. And then the third stage is the guru stage. And this is where someone transcends the method and can see through the method and knows how to share universal teachings so they apply in every circumstance. And when someone reaches that guru stage, often they're a self-proclaimed guru and they realize they've got this special ability to share their teachings in a universal way to make it relevant to everyone and everything and every experience happening around you. And there's a special kind of spiritual ego that the self-proclaimed gurus have because they're often extremely clever. They know how to convince you that what they're sharing is perfect for you in every situation, and they've reached that guru level. So those are the 3 stages that people often pass through, that we often pass through. In my own case, I definitely have entered the yogi stage many different times when I've found the answer through some sort of method, and I've wanted to spread the word, and I've done that through love, through wanting to share, through wanting other people to experience this too. So it definitely comes from a really good place. I completely understand it, although I think we need to be very careful of gurus, the gurus who arrive at that place because they've got the ability to see through this, and yet they continue seeing themselves as a guru and wanting to convince other people of what they're teaching. So I was out with Chira the other day and you were telling me about the yoga people here, which of course is, we respect the yoga people, but one observation you had that was very profound was how selfish they are.
Yeah, I feel that. I think they're a little bit selfish about it.
And then what I loved when you said they spend so much time focusing on self-development and spirituality, but then you ask them sometimes, well, what about actually helping other people, doing something to contribute to the community? And you feel that sometimes they're a little too focused on self to focus on other people.
They're just like, when I ask them what do you think or what should we do about it, it's like, why we have to keep a fuss? You say that to me.
Yeah.
Just like, as long as yourself happy, you don't have to care about others.
And it's interesting because then as we're walking along the beach here and we came to, shoot this film that I'm creating about spiritual ego, and, I'm focused on what I'm trying to achieve, and Chira's here as a tour guide, like trying to make sure it's a good experience. But then suddenly Chira just stopped everything, dropped everything, and started picking up the trash along the beach because you couldn't just let it go. And so for me, that's a wonderful example of spirituality in action in terms of actually contributing to other people around you, even when you can't solve the whole problem. The problem's much bigger than you, but you still want to make a small difference if you're able to.
Well, yeah, it's supposed to be like that, yeah.
I'm going to go through now the 15 signs of spiritual ego to look out for in yourself or in people around you. The first sign is that you're over-intellectualizing spirituality. Now, this was the big mistake that I made. I always wanted to analyze everything, talk about it, find fellow spiritual seekers, get into really long and deep conversations about it. But then I learned about spirituality, that it's so much more an experience of life, of relationships with others, that I realized that over-intellectualizing it was taking me away from that fundamental experience. The second key sign of spiritual ego is judging others as more or less advanced than you. This is where the superiority kicks in, and it's where the person that's a spiritual narcissist is starting to think that they're better than others. The third sign is having dogmatic beliefs, and this is where you start to believe in the fundamental truths that you're experiencing, and you hold them as rigid axioms in your understanding of yourself and the world. The next sign is having a messiah complex. Now, I've encountered a number of people in the spiritual world that, especially when they start to embrace psychedelics, they get whispers from gods that tell them certain things, and they start to believe that they are a god walking on earth. Now, of course, at some level, we're all gods. I can understand that we've all got the presence of God within, but the problem is when you translate that spiritual experience into your relationships with others, with society. The fifth sign is where you get stuck in the trap of always trying to think positively. I got really stuck in this when I used to embrace the law of attraction, and I thought that it was really important that spiritual people were always high vibration. Problem was, I was ignoring a lot of the fundamental negative emotions like fear, frustration, insecurity, and then I didn't realize you can actually get a lot of personal power from those emotions. The next and related sign of spiritual ego is when you're trying to be a guru to other people, when you think that you've found the answer. Particularly happens with people with the messiah complex, and you want to spread these fundamental truths to everyone around you. Another sign of spiritual ego is when you believe you've figured it all out, when your current state of knowledge you believe is at some sort of final or absolute level. Another sign of spiritual ego is spiritual righteousness. This is a good sign, and I used to do this all the time. It is when you engage in spiritual debates. Now, it's all very well to have spiritual dialogues where two people are mutually on the search for truth together, where they're supporting each other in that quest. But a debate usually involves one person being right and the other person being wrong. And spiritual ego is often present in people who are always in that debate. They always think that they're right, and they want to overpower other people around them. Another sign is lacking genuine curiosity about the world around you. You lack genuine curiosity because you feel like you've found the answer. You don't need to learn anything new. Another sign of spirituality is lacking humility, thinking you're better than people around you. Often people with spiritual ego are lacking compassion because they see themselves as so separate with their experiences. They think they've arrived at something. They lack compassion for people because they just think those other people haven't managed to attain their level of spiritual greatness. A big sign of spiritual ego is when you stop living your life so that you can pursue spiritual knowledge. It often happens in retreat type environments, or here in Koh Phangan when there's a yoga studio or retreat pretty much everywhere around this island, and people kind of want to withdraw from society, from where they're from. They can actually get here and find enlightenment, find the truth. They don't realize they're actually withdrawing from the world around them. Another sign of spiritual ego is that you've become a narcissist. So all you can think about is yourself. All you can talk about is your own story of what brings you here, and you really lose interest in other people around you. And that's really the final sign of spiritual ego, is when you've completely lost interest in others and you're only focused on yourself. Where are we going now?
We go to Apishada, very nice place there. Everywhere is nice here. Shira says nice.
And then when we get there, I'm going to share with you exactly what to do when you encounter people with spiritual ego.
Many times I like to go on Facebook events and then research for what's going on in Koh Phangan. I saw many people, they do like trash heroes. They go to pick up the trash on the beach, or do something useful, or food donation, or adopt cat or dog. But I have not seen many yoga communities that do something like that. They mostly just yoga people meet up with yoga people, do something about yoga things still. People go to ask for free. Namaste! Can I have some water? Can I have some fruit?
We're heading up to the final destination of this wonderful tour. It's the Secret Mountain. We can't divorce our spirituality from the relationships we have with each other, with society, with the whole world around us. And for me, it's such a key point that we live in a world where we've got the opportunity to learn from each other, to grow together, to have a collaborative experience, to celebrate our diversity. Now, I said at the start, I'm going to share what I think you should do if you have someone with a spiritual ego in your life, or if you're someone that may be developing a spiritual ego. I think it's very tempting to reject that person, to shut off and to draw your boundaries and to try to associate with people that are on a similar pursuit of meaning as what you're on. But I don't think that's the best thing to do in the face of people with spiritual ego in your life. Ultimately, I think that the spiritual communities that are developing all around the world in places like Koh Phangan are doing wonderful work. There's kernels of truths being shared and experienced by these people. We want to build bridges between these communities and the wider world outside, so that whatever's happening in that community we can learn from and embrace, and whatever's happening in the real world also can be shared inside the spiritual community, so we can collapse this distinction between the spiritual seekers and everyday people, so that we can realize that ultimately we're all on a search for meaning. We're all spiritual at a fundamental level. We just experience it in different ways. We have different language to share how we're experiencing it. And I think really that we need to break these boundaries between people and start to build much more effective knowledge exchanges in the world around us. Thanks so much for watching the video this far. I've got a lot more to share about this topic, and I'd love to learn from you in the comments below. What are some of the signs that I've missed? What are some of the points that I haven't made? What are some of the things I'm not considering? I'm going to put together a really big article and share it on IdeaPod. I'm going to share what's in this video, but I'd like to share whatever you share in the comments below, so that together we can create a really good article about spiritual ego, spiritual narcissism. We can create a guide about what people should do. Make sure you sign up to IdeaPod's email list. There's a link below so that you can find out when I publish that article. And if you find value in this video, please hit the like button. If you don't like what I'm sharing, please hit the dislike button, leave a comment and subscribe. I'm going to share a few more videos while I'm in Koh Phangan, and if you subscribe, see you next time.